Welcome back. The Atheist Experience is live, August 11th, 2002. I'm your host, Martin Wagner. My co-host, Mr. Ashley Perrien.
Afternoon.
And today on the show, we are quite privileged to have Dr. Alan Glasser back. You were here about a year ago, weren't you? Dr. Glasser, in addition to being our illustrious producer's father, is PhD, and his specialty is theoretical and computational plasma physics. So far above my head, I can tell you right now. But thanks for coming back on the show. You were here about a year ago, weren't you?
Yes, I think that's right.
When we were only an hour at that time, and you had some very interesting things to say about Big Bang cosmology. But today you've got a different topic, don't you? And so, great. Well, we're very happy to have you back, and we'll get right to you just as soon as our announcements and news are done. This show is sponsored by Atheist Community of Austin. We are a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. ACA holds weekly meetings every Sunday morning at 10:30 a.m. at Hot Jumbo Bagels, which is at 307 West 5th Street downtown between Guadalupe and Lavaca, with the exception of the first Sunday of each month when we have our lecture series in the Longhorn Room of First Cafeteria at North Cross Mall. So our next lecture series, we don't know our guest yet, but that'll be...
The next lecture series, we're not having a guest.
We're not having a guest
because it's Memorial Day or Labor Day or whatever it is.
Oh, so...
And so I think we're just going to...
Labor Day.
It's Labor Day.
Okay, so we're just going to... I think just
have a brunch?
Yeah.
Okay.
Talk about the September 11th plans for that and stuff like that.
Good, which we do have plans. I'll get down to that in a second. Godless Gamers takes place every Monday night, 7 p.m. at the home of Russell and Virginia Glasser. And Atheist Happy Hour takes place at Thursday evenings, around 7:38-ish, at Antonio's Tex-Mex, which is near the intersection of I-35 and Highway 183. Lots of fun. Always, and good evening get-together for folks who find it difficult to make the morning get-togethers. The Nonprofits is the ACA's internet radio show, which plays 2 o'clock p.m. every Saturday at the atheistnetwork.com website. Your web browser will need the Real Player plugin to hear the audio stream. And there is a live chat room feature that you can use to interact with the program. The show is hosted by Jeff D. and co-hosted by Vic Farrow, Mary McManamy, and Russell Glasser. And it's always much fun to listen to. I sat in yesterday because Jeff was absent and Vic was absent. And
okay.
So I sat in for like the last hour of it.
Yeah. Haven't heard it yet.
Yeah.
Want to, though.
Good show. Although I understand Russell's hoping to move away from real audio, actually having MP3 streams.
Well, this site is moving. They're changing providers, and they're not going to allow they're not going to do real audio. It's going to be streaming MP3 from now on.
Well, good for them. Yeah.
Sometime soon in the future.
Yeah. Sounds like a good audio format for a change.
Yeah.
All right. November the 2nd is still the tentative date for the Godless Americans March on Washington. This is an American Atheists sponsored event, and many of our folks have been talking about going out for that. Okay. You can find out more information at the godlessamericans.org website. And finally, our big announcement is that the Atheist Community of Austin is sponsoring a September 11th memorial gathering. This year, September 11th falls on a Wednesday, so this will be Wednesday evening, September 11th, from 6 to 8 p.m. at Woolridge Square, which I understand is a little park downtown near the public library. There's a gazebo there or something.
The History Center and the library and stuff like that. It's right across the street from that. Okay,
good. And so this is a public memorial gathering, completely secular in nature for any non-religious citizen. You don't have to be ACA member. If you want to publicly memorialize the victims of last year's religious terror in New York and Washington, well, then you can do so in a forum that is not going to have such things as prayer vigils and stuff like that. So, great. Well, that, I think, takes care of the announcements, does it? Yes. Although I just wanted to say really quickly, we caught the tail end of the show prior to this one. Yeah. Before we went on the air, and apparently it was some divine firewalking thing. And again, here we are, the skeptics, here to poop on everybody's party. But, firewalking, folks, is pure physics, right? There's no mind over matter involved. There's no magic or divine guidance. Coal is just a slow conductor of heat, and if you walk over it fast enough, you're pretty safe not to get burned. You don't see anybody firewalking over actual fire, do you? Or over hot metal. So when they can do that, I'll be impressed, right? So anyway, that's done. Ashley, what's happening in the world this week? Let's go over to news.
Okay. Got 2 quick news stories here. Both of them kind of fall into the news of the weird category. First one, a mom sues for $1.5 million after school rejects son's letter to Jesus. Brookfield, Ohio. Philip Vaccaro considers Jesus his best friend. So to him, Jesus seemed perfect for a writing assignment the 7th grader got this spring in his language arts class in Brookfield, Ohio. Write a friendly letter to someone who dramatically changed his life. But his teacher didn't like his choice of correspondent. She told him that he could not write that letter because Jesus wasn't a real person, that he didn't exist. How dare they throw their atheistic values upon my child, is what the mother had to say.
Well, the mother's got a point.
Yes.
The mother's got a point.
Yes,
right?
it is. It is not the school's place to say that Jesus was or was not real.
Yeah, an atheist teacher. Now, what's interesting, though, what you didn't point out is that the boy's mother is the one who said that, the teacher told the little boy that Jesus didn't exist. We have, apparently there's no actual interview with the teacher.
No.
As part of this.
Not at least in the article.
But let's just assume, give her the benefit of the doubt and say she's telling the truth. She's dead right. An atheist teacher has no more right to tell a Christian student that Jesus doesn't exist any more than a school or a Christian teacher has the right to force non-Christian students to, to say under God or to engage in any sort of school prayer or what have you.
Yeah.
Religion, period, doesn't belong in the school. Shouldn't be an issue in school.
Exactly.
In public school, anyway. If you want to go to parochial school, go to parochial school.
Yeah. But the attorney for the school district said the class assignment was to prepare a letter and mail it to someone else with the hope that students would get a response. In the attorney's words, it would be difficult to get a written reply from Jesus.
Well,
which is definitely true.
People just headed down to the dump with these children's letters to God.
Okay.
Well, if Reverend Moon got all these letters back from Jesus, God himself, he got a letter from God.
So it's not impossible.
So precisely. So
and apparently God isn't even using a secretary.
Yeah. I mean, this could have constituted actually an interesting test. For the existence of
a theological test. If you write a letter to Jesus,
well, maybe not really that serious of a test. But okay.
Okay, that's basically that one.
Well, I mean, that'll get settled, and teachers, get reprimanded.
Yeah, as they should. Right. But the teacher should get reprimanded because, yes, if she did say that can't write because he isn't real.
Yeah,
that's definitely something that shouldn't have been
said. It's not her place, right?
It depends on what the assignment was to whether or not he should be able to choose Jesus. If it's just write a letter to someone who's important in your life.
What is he, 7 years old?
7th grade.
So 7th grade. Okay, so he's like
it
13
depends.
years old.
If the idea is write a letter to someone important in your life, that qualifies. If the part of the assignment was you have to write it and send it to them in hopes of getting a response, it doesn't qualify because whether he's real or not, he's not walking the earth. He doesn't have a mailing address.
Oh, yeah. Well, Christians would say, he is if you just open your heart and have faith.
Yes, but that isn't a street address. What's a zip code?
I'm just making the point, Ashley. I mean, you don't have to...
Infinity.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So
you just write God on the envelope and hold it up.
Hold it up.
So expect some passing angel to grab it on the way. Okay, what else?
Okay, this one. Archbishop in waiting becomes a Druid. The next Archbishop of Canterbury was inducted as an honorary white Druid yesterday at an open-air ceremony in Wales, reminiscent of a scene from a Monty Python sketch.
That's actually what the news article says?
That's actually what it says. Dr. Rowan Williams, dismissing suggestions that he was dabbling in paganism, joined blue-hooded Druids ranked behind a golden harp to be admitted into the Welsh Gorset of Bards.
Okey-doke.
It was one of Dr. Williams' last duties as Archbishop of Wales. He was named last month as successor to Dr. George Carey, who retires in October. Dr. Williams, who during the ceremony was given the bardic name of Ap Anurin. I keep thinking aneurysm when I see that.
Yeah, I know. That sounds like some horrible growth in your body.
Described the award as one of the greatest honors that Wales can bestow on her citizens. He added, the suggestion that Gorset is even remotely associated with paganism is deeply offensive.
Well,
which I simply don't get. I mean,
Druids.
It is Druid.
Yeah.
That is kind of based on that thing. After the ceremony, Dr. Williams said, I feel very saddened that some people have reached the wrong conclusion about the ceremony. If people had actually looked at the words of the hymns and text used, they would have seen a very Christian service.
That's Catholic, Marge. You might as well ask me to do a voodoo dance.
So, yep, the next Archbishop of Canterbury is now an honorary white Druid.
Well, he's covering his bases, I guess. So this is more hilarity from England. You know, what did we talk about last week? How something like 1/3 of clergy in the Church of England are openly doubt the resurrection of Jesus?
They have serious doubts on
which I kind of has always thought that if you have that's a thing you have, that's one of the basic tenets of Christianity. If you don't believe Jesus rose from the dead, you're effectively not a Christian.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I remember from when I went to church. You know, there were at least a couple, 3 things you had to believe. Yeah. You know, Son of God, sent here to save us from our sins, was crucified, rose from the dead after 3 days, blah, blah, blah. Those are like that's the menu of stuff that you have to...
If you don't believe that, you're not actually a Christian. So...
Well, that's nuts. I have a quick news article here.
Okay.
This is actually derived... This is from today's paper, The Statesman, and... these darn Catholic sex scandal priests keep trying to weasel out of taking any responsibility for their actions. Well, these aren't the actual themselves, but there's a group now within the Catholic Church in America who's like trying to openly support these guys. The article just reads really quickly, judging purely from the outcome, Saturday's concluding meeting of Roman Catholic religious orders would seem to have closed the debate on the Church's sex abuse policy, the one remaining major body of priests adopted a zero-tolerance policy towards sex offenders with only a few minor procedural changes. And yet, the meeting will likely be remembered for a different milestone. The convention of nearly 100 marked the first time since the June meeting of the bishops in Dallas that dissent was voiced publicly against zero tolerance. The dissent came from Reverend Kenneth Connors, president of the Conference of Major Superiors of Men, that is autonomous from the bishops and represents 1/3 of the nation's priests. In his speech to the group, Connors said that by using the war slogan, his words, of zero tolerance, the bishops abandoned what they and Jesus stood for, quote, the miracle of grace. The bishops, quote, evaporated the realities of repentance, conversion, and reconciliation. You know, you can't just rape a child and say you're sorry, okay? You can't. That's not how it works. These are crimes. These people need to be punished. And it just amazes me that that there is still a group of them that keeps trying to assume any sort of responsibility for what's been going on here. And that's why the church is losing so much credibility among, not only its flock, but the secular world. Yeah. It's just disgusting. Disgusting. Very sad to see that. Oh, well. Okay, then. Dr. Glasser, welcome back to the show.
Nice to be back.
Yeah, this is a live call-in program. We're going to put the phone up after about 15, 20 minutes or so. But just really quickly, find out more about our group at our lovely website at atheist-community.org. And over to you. So, what have you got for us today?
Well, I think that last news item was a perfect lead-in to my topic.
Okay.
I want to talk about some new ideas about a very old philosophical problem, which is relating to free will and determinism. I am not sure just how far back this problem goes. It may be the ancient Greeks. It was certainly a prominent topic of discussion among the medieval scholastic philosophers. They asked the question, how can you have an all-powerful, all-knowing God who is able to create a creature, a human, who is capable of free will? If he is all-knowing and all-powerful, how can his creature do things that he can't predict?
Right.
And if his creature is capable of free will, if he weren't capable of free will, then he couldn't be held responsible for choosing good over evil, and it wouldn't make sense to reward or punish him with heaven or hell. Mm-hmm. In fact, this whole issue of determinism versus responsibility for one's actions is as current as our judicial system. A very good example of this is that the well-known lawyer Clarence Darrow of the early part of this century was famous for defending people against capital punishment by arguing that they couldn't be responsible for their actions because of their being subject to determinism, such as from heredity and environment. In fact, he was famous for never losing a client to capital punishment, not even in the famous case of Leopold and Loeb, who killed a child as a kind of a joyride. Now, the aspect of this philosophical problem that I really want to talk about is a bit different from this, and it's something more that you might want to refer to as scientific determinism. We are told that the laws of physics are entirely rigorous and deterministic, and yet we all have feelings of free will. We certainly all have a kind of an intuition that we're free to make decisions and that nothing is coercing us. How do we reconcile these things? Now, there are two aspects of modern physics that we could use to break out of this conundrum. One of them is quantum uncertainty, and that is not what I'm going to be talking about. Instead, I'm going to be staying strictly within the topic of classical physics, classical mechanics. I'm going to be talking about something called deterministic chaos. Our modern scientific ideas about determinism can be attributed to Newton. In 1680, he published his famous book Principia Mathematica, and he really, I could almost say, performed miracles in this book. But I wouldn't say a thing like that.
Perfectly natural miracles.
Yeah. He invented the calculus that allows us to understand the mathematics of continuous motion. He discovered the laws which are expressed in terms of the calculus. At the heart of the laws of motion are the forces that act on a particle and on a body. And he discovered the law of gravity. And when he put all of this together, he came up with something we call a differential equation, describing how a particle moves continuously through time. And he used his powerful understanding of mathematics to actually rigorously and completely solve one such differential equation for the motion of two particles under their mutual gravitational attraction, namely, for example, the Earth and the Sun, or in fact, any two massive bodies. These were astounding accomplishments. This was just amazing, and he completely astonished his contemporaries to the point, and his successors. An example of this is the poem by Alexander Pope, the Enlightenment poet, who said, "Nature and nature's laws lay hid in night. God said, 'Let Newton be,' and all was light." He also caused serious problems for philosophers. There was a British empiricist philosopher named David Hume, who had shown quite conclusively that absolute knowledge of the real world should be an impossibility. And yet, it seemed as if Newton had achieved this impossibility. Of course, today we know that Newton was not perfect. We know that Newton did not achieve absolute knowledge of the real world. This leaves room for physicists like me to spend careers doing more. But it was sufficiently, this contradiction between what Hume had shown and what Newton had shown was sufficiently powerful to cause Immanuel Kant, the German philosopher, to invent a whole system of philosophy trying to resolve this apparent contradiction. About 100 years after Newton, there was a French mathematician named Pierre Laplace at the time of the French Revolution. He worked in the area of celestial mechanics and also probability theory. And he gave the most definitive statement of classical determinism by saying that if we could... Now, you see, the motion of two particles is described by a differential equation. The motion of three particles, such as the Earth, Sun, and Moon, is described by a different differential equation, somewhat more complicated, but of the same mathematical type.
Right.
In fact, the entire solar system can be described by a yet more complicated differential equation, and likewise an entire galaxy or the entire universe as understood at this time. Laplace argued that if we could know the velocity and position of every particle in the universe at a given instant of time, and if we could solve a very difficult mathematical problem, somewhat more difficult than they were able to solve at that time, then we could know the entire past and future of the universe. And that was the most definitive statement of this scientific determinism. There was an occasion when Laplace had the opportunity to explain this philosophy to Napoleon. And Napoleon said to him, "And what about God?" And Laplace said, "Sire, I have no need of that hypothesis." Well, following Laplace, and remember this was around 1800, for the next 100 or so years, people tried to solve the three-body problem. You might think that wasn't a big step from the two-body problem, which Newton had solved entirely and perfectly, even without the aid of a computer.
Some guys are just smart.
Yep. Nobody was able to do it. They were able to develop ultimate methods that and allowed them, for example, to predict the exact time of solar and lunar eclipses, that being a solution to the three-body problem, hundreds of years into the future. And yet they were aware of the fact that these were only approximate solutions. They could be accurate to, say, many decimal places, but they weren't the same kind of complete solution that Newton had found for the two-body problem. They kept on thinking, well, this is a hard problem, but maybe if we were a little bit smarter, a little bit cleverer, we could solve it. Around the turn of the next century, around 1900, there was another famous French mathematician named Henri Poincaré. He did some brilliant mathematics to demonstrate that there was something completely different about the three-body problem than the two-body problem. He showed that it can be unstable if these three bodies are moving in a particular stable orbit, unstable orbit, and if you displace them a little bit, they just completely diverge from it. They go away. This was something that simply couldn't happen in the case of the two-body problem. I'll now jump another 65 years to 1965. There was a physicist named Edward Lorenz who was studying a very simplified model of weather. And he realized that it had a certain property of extreme sensitivity to initial conditions. He introduced a description of this as the butterfly effect. What he said was that suppose you predict the weather in New York, and then you slightly change the the initial conditions that you use to make this prediction by having a butterfly flap his wings somewhere in Brazil. That butterfly flapping his wings in Brazil creates a disturbance which propagates out and eventually a week later reaches New York and can, for example, change the weather from a calm sunny day to a thunderstorm. So that's the butterfly effect. Another 10 years later, in 1975, there was a fellow at the University of Maryland named Jim York, and he was studying another very simple system, actually much simpler than weather, and this was just a set of 3 coupled oscillators. And he also found, by this time in 1975, there were some pretty good computers, and these things could be solved very accurately computationally. And he found that ever so slight a change of the initial conditions leads to a total divergence of the resulting behavior. So it was actually York who introduced this phrase, sensitivity to initial conditions, and it was also York who introduced the term deterministic chaos. The point of this is that while the motion of this very simple system of 3 coupled oscillators is described by entirely deterministic mathematical equations, if you ever so slightly change the initial condition, it goes off into a totally different orbit. In 1987, there was a best-selling book written by James Gleick called Chaos, in which he gathered together many of these related results. And if any of you are interested in pursuing this topic, that would be an excellent place to read about it. I've given an example of this in a picture I've brought in here from my own work. What you see here is 2 curves, one in red, one in blue, and it shows the motion of a charged particle in a magnetic field. This is something near and dear to the hearts of magnetic fusion physicists like myself, who would like to use magnetic fields to confine plasma and heat it to 100 million degrees so that it will undergo thermonuclear fusion reactions. And to do this, you need to confine the particles extremely well.
Oh, I would think so, yeah.
So this shows the position of 2 particles as a function of time, one in red and one in blue, and the initial conditions for these 2 particles differ by 1 part in 100,000. What you see over on the left in early time is that the 2 orbits of these particles overlap so perfectly that you can only see one color, which is red. But as time progresses, the 2 orbits come apart until by this run, they are totally different.
Right, because the blue particle has had its initial conditions changed just very slightly.
By 1 part in 100,000.
Wow. And so that small a change in the initial conditions can throw something that much off kilter.
In mathematical terms, what's happening is that slight change in initial conditions grows exponentially until the 2 particles diverge entirely.
Okay.
So let me summarize what I've said. Newton was able to solve the 2-body problem perfectly and entirely, analytically. Nobody was able to do the same for the 3-body problem. Today we understand that anything greater than 2 particles, or in fact 1 particle in a magnetic field, as I was just showing you, has the property that an infinitesimal change in the initial conditions leads to totally different behavior. And this is what we mean by deterministic chaos. What does this have to do with the old philosophical problem of determinism and free will? Here's where I go off into my own thinking. A human brain consists of, say, a few 100 billion neurons connected together in an exceedingly complicated way. It's much more complicated than the three-body problem. It's much more complicated than a galaxy. It would be utterly impossible to create two humans that were so perfectly prepared initially that each one would know what the other is going to do. They are far more individualistic than the three-body problem.
Right.
And so our feelings of free will are accurate in the sense that no other human, certainly no computer, no superhuman intelligence would be able to anticipate and predict what a given human will do. And so my point is that our feelings of free will are consistent with our belief in scientific determinism. That's
So simply because
my conclusion.
And you say specifically it has to do with just the complexity of the structure of the human brain.
Well,
physical object.
together with the mathematical understanding that we have today, and we did not have 100 or 200 years ago, that differential equations can have this property of deterministic chaos because of their sensitivity to initial conditions.
Right.
But is this something to where it cannot be predicted, or simply that it's really, really hard?
I think I'd have to say that it's impossible in principle to predict it because you could neither know nor impose initial conditions to the degree of perfection that it would be necessary to really carry out this prediction.
Okay. Because that's interesting, because it sounds like, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you are saying that free will can be confirmed essentially in terms of the physical properties that we, not just by the structure of our brains, but I guess the input that we get and what have you, and it can all be explained more or less in just purely naturalistic terms.
I guess another way of expressing it is that when Laplace was explaining all this to Napoleon, he got it wrong.
Okay.
The mathematics of 1800 was not sufficiently well developed to understand this fundamental property of the equations that he thought could be used to completely understand the past and future of the universe.
Right, because he didn't understand the sensitivity to initial conditions.
That's right.
At that time.
Yeah.
Okay. Because we were talking about this a little bit. Well, to a certain degree, last night at dinner before you arrived. I've wondered, since, as human beings, since intelligence is our niche, evolutionarily speaking, that as a factor could be sort of, could be the X factor that you talk about, the initial condition that can completely throw predictability of all human behaviors off kilter.
Yeah.
But then I'm thinking to myself, well, at a certain point, there are life forms that are not on our level on the tree, such as dogs and cats, for example. I know that my dog makes decisions about things that she wants to do.
Yeah.
I often have to tug the leash and hold her back from getting in the mud and the brambles and getting all stinky. But she's wanting to do it, and it's a decision that she's making. So at a certain point. But again, now you want to go down the ladder to paramecium, for crying out loud, which are just cellular.
Well, I guess I would want that as simple as a paramecium is, it's far more complex than a three-body problem.
Right.
There's
And
a lot more than 3 particles to a paramecium.
Yeah. I mean, there's probably at least several thousand base pairs in the genome of a paramecium.
Right. So at that point, then we are confronted with the question: well, does sentience or intelligence, is that even a factor then? Can it be said that a completely insentient life form, which I think paramecia are, can be said to have free will when it can't even really be said to be thinking about stuff in the way that you and I and Ashley think.
Can the Earth, Moon, Sun system be described as having free will? I think, I guess what I'm trying to argue is that that this concept of sensitivity to initial conditions is sufficient to remove the apparent contradiction between physical and between physical determinism and free will. I wouldn't go so far as to say that it explains free will or that it makes free will necessary.
But it sounds like, and so once again, I'm the complete mathematical layman here, so smack me upside the head if I'm wrong. But it seems like another thing you're indicating is that scientific determinism allows for indeterminacy, right? I mean, it's
yes. In fact, the commonly used term is deterministic chaos.
Right. Okay.
Where a system which is subject to deterministic laws of physics is nevertheless capable of chaotic behavior.
Right. Okay. So another determinism is not that hard and fast.
It is deterministic, and yet at the same time it's chaotic. Where, in fact, the definition of chaos here is the sensitivity to initial conditions and the divergence of initially nearby trajectories.
So, okay. Wow. Ashley?
Only question I would have is, God is considered all-powerful and all-knowing. If this is a problem of,
so you want to relate
we have to get down to the millionth, decimal point to get the right answer.
Even that won't help you because it grows exponentially.
Yeah.
I mean, the error, the divergence between the orbits grows exponentially. So nailing it down to a few more decimal places will only gain you a little bit of time.
A few more decimal places.
And so yes, you're saying you're relating the two forms of this issue of free will and determinism to each other. On the one hand, I was talking about the issue of an omniscient and omnipotent God. On the other hand, I was talking about Newton and scientific determinism. You're saying that the latter has implications for the former, that how could there be an omniscient and omnipotent God in the presence of this kind of indeterminacy. Of course, people who believe in God find that no problem at all to disbelieve in physics to the extent that
it allows God to do whatever he wants.
Suspension of disbelief is one of their favorite activities. But for those of us who believe in physics.
Well, physics is a matter of belief, right? I mean, it can be tested. It's mathematical. It's
testing can never be perfect.
Right.
Hume had a point.
Right. So, and then the question here, from a religious standpoint, would have, because the free will argument from the point of view that we often hear from our callers and Christian callers is that they do want to have this all-powerful deity for whom no rules exist, thereby allowing him to essentially achieve whatever they want him to achieve in order to maintain his supremacy in all things. And yet, for example, the appeal to free will is quite frequently used as a response to the problem of evil. And I've often seen that free will gets to be this thing that gets God off the hook. And
for having created these creatures who are capable of doing evil.
But I always point out that in the context of that argument, the problem of evil, free will seems to me to be a big red herring, because the problem of evil isn't so much about human free will as it is God as the moral authority over human beings, and thus should the moral authority over all human beings itself be a moral being, and you would expect a moral being to prevent evil in all its forms. And it's interesting to try to see them squirm out of that. I'd be interested to hear how Christians respond to the whole difference. If God, of course, would be supposedly more complex than a three-body problem himself. So,
would think so.
So then would his actions then be completely indeterministic? And at that point, would there then be any point in worshiping this God?
So is God a raving lunatic?
Right. So then does worship make any sense? You know, if such a being were to exist, would worship make any sense? Would entreating this being for favors or special...
I guess we know the answer that you and I would give, but that's why it's more fun to take phone
Okay,
call.
now you have... right, and before we get to those, so, you know, you've said that some of your critics or some of your colleagues have been critical of your idea. What are some of the criticisms that have come up?
I think they're simply unwilling to make the conceptual leap from the mathematics that is our meat and potatoes into the realm of philosophical speculation.
Okay.
I am the sort of fool who rushes in where those angels fear to tread.
Well, you know, nothing wrong with that. But, Well, let's see if maybe we have some callers and they'll have a thing or two.
Before we take our first caller, I have to explain myself. Every now and then during the show, you're going to see me go, ugh. The air duct up there is dripping, and so every 5 minutes or so, you're going to see me do a little flip out.
Well, we're not sure it's every 5 minutes. I mean, we can't predict.
Well, it's indeterministic.
Yeah, we can't determine, but give or take.
Yes. Yes, you see.
To a certain decimal point of error,
Right.
every now and then I'm going to...
Yeah. Well, you could always exercise your free will not to shudder, and you just take it like a man. Of course.
So now you can spend the rest of the show watching me waiting for you to
There would
flip
be,
out.
of course, perfect justice. If it were dripping right there, that would be great. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah, that would be something to determine.
Then we would have to figure out whether it's going to roll down the right side or the left
Or the other.
and that's in sensitivity to initial conditions.
Yeah. You know, actually, did you ever used to watch Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom? Right. Well, this is Marlon Perkins, who always sent his assistant Jim to go out and wrestle the rhinoceros or something. So Ashley gets to be the gem of the atheist experience, and we're going to use Ashley today to do chaos theory experiments.
So I'll try and keep my head perfectly under the drop here, and we'll see what happens.
We're going to use Ashley's skull as our sounding board. That's really interesting, and it's definitely something that it's great to have a show where something completely new that I haven't heard before. All right, well, I'm being told it's Ginger first, so let's see what she has to say. Hello, Ginger.
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you guys doing?
We're doing
pretty
quite
good.
well. How are you?
Well, you know, it's there.
Oh, okay.
Hey,
well, I hope. All right.
got some questions for you.
Yes.
One, well, not questions, more like just comments. One, God did create evil. He created the devil. Second thing is why do people sit there and confess if he is all-knowing?
Okay, well, we're not the people to ask. I
Well,
think we should ask-
exactly. Well, I wanted to find out what, I know.
Yeah.
People need to be able to forgive themselves, and that's the way to do it, to admit to somebody else. So, because you have to keep it inside.
Right. Well, of course, no, assuming for the sake of argument, once again, that it's okay, because since we don't believe in God, so we don't necessarily share the point of view about God creating evil, but assuming that he did, then I think that if you're right, then Christians' claims that God is any sort of moral authority over humanity tends to go out the window. Because it doesn't seem to me that a morally perfect being would have any desire or reason to create, as it were, evil.
Exactly.
Right. So, I think the sensible summation you can make there is to let's just dispense with God as a concept entirely, shouldn't we? I mean,
If I understand the caller, I think the idea is that God created the devil and then delegated the problem of creating evil to the devil. That way, removing the responsibility from himself.
but I think
Way
it's
to go.
But I think it's a heresy. Isn't it a heresy to say that the devil creates anything? I mean, God is supposed to be the only creative force, divine creative force. So wouldn't it be a heresy to say that the devil is creative, is a creating?
Yes, but he's not
This
creating
actually
anything,
brings
he's
me
just-
to the next line of the poem I quoted earlier.
Okay.
After nature and nature's laws lay hid in night, God said, "Let Newton be," and all was light. It didn't last. The devil shouting "Ho!" said, "Let Einstein be," and restored the status quo.
Okay.
So you guys,
Alexander Pope probably didn't enter that.
No, he didn't say that.
so you guys you believe in the evolution, like from ape to, or monkey or to
I would
human.
say that we basically believe in scientific explanations because they're understandable and accessible to the human mind, and certainly that would include Darwin as well as Newton. And
this comes since Darwin and since Newton. That's
so
reinforced their findings.
I confirm your worst fears. We believe all of that.
Oh, that's fine with me because that I think more scientifically anyway. But you guys are great, and I think
thank
it's
you.
going to roll off of Ashley's right side of his head.
You think so? All right.
Talk to you later.
All right.
Bye.
Well, we're going
Are
to
we
start.
taking a poll?
We'll take a poll.
Oh, okay.
We'll do that, and you'll win the. Thanks very much for your call, Ginger. So we'll just have to. I'm just like dying now to drip things off Ashley's head. Don't take that the wrong way. Okay. Troy is on line 2. Let's see what he has to say about that.
Hey, good evening,
How are you doing?
Hey, I wanted to ask you guys a couple questions. So if you all don't believe in God, then who you think created us, human beings?
In my case, it was my mom and dad.
No, I mean actually the beginning, the first man that came on earth. Who you think?
Somebody up there must have created rainbows and sunsets and vibrators.
No, I'm serious because I would like to know.
Why does it have to be a who?
I mean, who create a man? Who create man? Because with all the technology
Well, no, wait a
we have
minute.
today, we can't do it.
Why does it? Why does it have to be a who? I mean, have you ever thought about questioning the very premise of your assumptions?
Well,
I mean, who says it has to be a who?
That's my point exactly. We don't know who, but what I'm saying is, who created us? The different colors of people. It would have to be a.
No, wait a minute. No, see, that's you're missing it. It's not. It's a we don't know who. The very notion of whether or not it even was a who or has to be a who or even the need that a being.
What created humans?
Okay, as well, I think that's still sort of an open question. That's a field called abiogenesis, right?
Well, if you want to go back that far, what created humans is
what would have that technology?
an evolutionary process.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a technological question. I mean, there are well understood biological processes that have developed. That I mean, we understand the history and the.
Who would have the technology to do that? Back in that time.
It doesn't take technology.
Yeah, I mean,
there are chemical reactions and chemical processes that can take place to form biological chemicals. From that, evolution can take over to get to us. From the first couple of proteins and stuff snapping together to us.
Then why is that not happening today?
It is.
With who?
It's taken a while. Takes about 4.5 billion years.
Yeah. Exactly. We are talking about 4.5 billion years, not 3.5 weeks.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
We don't even begin to have the knowledge to even think back, even to go to identify that, to make sure that it is true. That's my point exactly, because it's what I'm saying. It's just like with you three guys and me. Whoever created man had to be the most powerful person.
And what created him?
And God created him.
Well, God created himself?
Yes, God has to be the ruler of heaven and earth.
Why?
Why? You think about it. It can't be man. It can't be nothing. No grass, plant.
Wait a minute. Where is your evidence that of this being?
I know that.
How do you know it? Give us your evidence.
We don't have to. We don't have. I think.
Yes, you do. If you're going to insert a statement of knowledge, you need to back that statement up with evidence.
I think that's the problem that Americans have, and people in America have, that since we can't prove that there was a being, then we're going to say, well, it wasn't true. I don't think that philosophy is right, but it's all right for you to have your opinion about what you believe. Well, I think it's what people go wrong at, is judging you guys because of what you believe in. No one should do that. Everybody has their own opinion about it, is what I'm saying. It's just like saying that whoever created the heavens and the earth, whoever created man and woman, had to be the most powerful person, because you can't take two black people and make a white baby. You can't take two white people and make a black baby.
Yes, well, we understand how genetic. Yes, and
you're putting a lot of assumptions there that simply don't work.
I mean, the science of genetics. I mean, we understand why we have different races. Different races exist because of genetic drift. These are not unanswered questions. There are natural explanations to everything that you're describing, and there's no need to have a recourse to some invisible man to explain any of it. We understand how biology works, how life evolve and develop, how frequencies and how genetic frequency changes from generation to generation. That's essentially at the root of evolution. I mean, we understand these things.
There's no need to have.
There is a lot that we don't know. It's true.
There's a reason for that, because only he can identify that.
Well, but again, here's what you're doing. You're taking this concept called God, and you're just plugging it into anything about life in the universe that you don't know. It's called, and that's not the appropriate way to go about attaining knowledge.
But that's the same reason you identified as saying that it's not true. You don't know. Now, am I absolutely right? You don't know.
Well, yes, we don't know absolutely everything in the universe, but we admit that,
so
and we
can't say that it is wrong.
Now, hang on a second.
Just like I can't say you wrong about what you.
Yeah, but hang on a second. Hang on a second. We admit that we don't know, and we'll look into it and try and find out over time.
Right.
We don't just take a concept and say, "Oh well, God did it."
Yeah. I mean,
end of story. No need to investigate.
Right,
God did it.
There'll be both people working on both sides. The truth is what I'm saying.
Yeah, but the people on the God side don't work to find out.
Yeah, I mean, you're not doing that. You've basically decided that you already have the truth. You have this concept called God, which gets to be your all-purpose explanation for everything that you don't actually know about.
Right, and
then that's called right. Okay, and that's called.
That theory is proven wrong. Then I'm going.
Well, it's
until it's proven wrong, then I'm going to continue to believe that way. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
because we all are created equally.
Well, again, it's not up to unbelievers to prove your theory wrong. If you want to assert that a God exists, it's your responsibility to provide evidence for that claim, and then we'll have a look at it. Anyway, thanks for your call. We got to go on to our next caller. Okay, so you take care. Bye.
And also the problem with that is opinions. If it's just somebody's opinion, well then let them believe it. But the problem is, what they'll do is try and impose their opinion some way on us.
Yeah,
that's where the problem lies.
There's a big misunderstanding also, and Troy, I think, reflected it, is that there are people who are generally uneducated in science and the scientific method and how it works, tend to think that, oh, well, this is all just your opinion, and this is my opinion, and this is the other opinion, and it's all just opinions, when it's not. Okay, I mean, these are scientific fields, have a great deal of work behind them. They've been developed. There's mathematics behind them. There's research. There are reasons that scientists arrive at the conclusions about things that they arrive at. It's not.
There's a process of which is self-correcting. When a scientist wants to put forth new ideas, he publishes them. Before they can be published, they are refereed by other scientists knowledgeable in the same field. And if something gets through that filter and is eventually found out to be wrong, then it can be corrected by later publications that are subject to the same rigorous screening.
Right.
And so the whole process evolves into better and more correct ideas.
Right, and in religion, there is no equivalent to this form of peer review.
The difference is between an application of reason versus an appeal to authority.
Right. Yeah. Okay, we'll see who is next. Here it is. Okay, Susan on line 3. Let's see what she has to say. Hi, Susan.
Hi.
Hi, you're on the air. How you doing?
First of all, to Dr. Glasser, congratulations on the new grandson. He is so cute.
Oh.
That's Jenny.
That's Susan Brown. How you doing?
Fine. Okay. It's hard to hear you, though. I can hardly hear you. So.
Okay. Well, you've got that control room, so we'll have to make sure they take care of you.
I just wanted to comment on a couple of callers the past couple of weeks have been saying, if you don't believe in God or higher power, what's keeping you from raping, murdering, pillaging, etc.? And my only comment is, I don't know what's keeping me from doing all that, but I think if you look at who's in prison right now, atheists are grossly underrepresented.
That's not a statistic we're looking to correct, though.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
This gets back to, I think, in many ways, what we're talking about in terms of the whole free will question, which is that decisions are made about, for example, let's talk about human behavior, morals, as it were. the way we behave, at least if a person is capable of thinking straight, and in order to exist in society, you do. You observe things around you in the world all the time. Okay, nobody exists in a little cube where they are sealed off, vacuum shut from the rest of life and life experience. And it is by these interactions that you have just with your environment, other people around you, and you observe things, and you observe specifically the consequences of actions. And then as a result of that, just simple thinking it out enables most people to kind of go, okay, well, this is how this works. And if you run contrary to that, then you end up being one of those guys in prison who didn't get it and who thought that he didn't have to interact in a positive way with his environment and his neighborhood and his society and his friends and his people around him. And, those people, we call them criminals, and we take their freedom away.
I'd like to put in some thoughts on this.
Okay.
A key difference between science and religion as a way of knowing the world is that in science we rely on our own individual perceptions and thought and logic to construct an understanding of the world. In religion, we are told instead to believe words that were written in a book between 2,000 and 3,000 years ago, and not to question them. In a similar way, when it comes to questions of right and wrong, of value, of morals, in the case of religion, we are told thou shalt and thou shalt not, and this is authority, and we're told not to question it. Whereas among us atheists, when we try to understand and construct an understanding of our values, we look inside ourselves. We rely on our own perceptions and our own judgments of what we feel, and we recognize that the source of these values is our own selves and not some external source which is given to us as authority.
And the comeback Christians will always give you when you make that statement is, so you can just do whatever you want.
Yeah. Well, if it's your own opinion.
So if you just felt like going out and committing mayhem, then if that's what comes from within you, then that's moral as far as you're concerned.
Since your opinion is
no lies. We can do anything we want. Anything. Ow! Ow! Oh, real mature, Lenny.
And that's where I come in with actions having consequences and people needing not simply to go by what is within yourself, but we as a society, we're a social species, right? Consensus. Yeah. And that's how we get the morals that allow society to survive. Because you have to coexist in order to have a functioning society.
So our morals are external.
Yeah. So again, there's that, when you change the initial conditions just a little bit, that can determine how you think about something. But in most cases, we develop principles. Principles are how we develop what our moral. A recent debate, and before we're going to go ahead and let you go, Susan, unless you have another question for Dr. Glasser.
No, besides, I've got to go pillage, without God to keep me from doing it. I've got to go do it.
Enjoy.
Yeah, we'll join you later.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Take care, Susan. Okay, well, we'll just go to BT Online, too. I'll see what he has on. I had a thought, but I guess it wasn't that important. Hey, how you doing? You're on the air.
Hello.
Hi, you're on the air.
Let me step outside so I won't get feedback from my TV.
Okay, you can just.
But I've been listening to everything. Matter of fact, I didn't, turn to your show a couple of times, and well, I just wanted to make a statement. I just wanted to kind of, give you a summary on, how I really see it. I listen, and everybody, everything that they do and say, it turns to. If something happened, it must have been a fate of God or something, you know what I mean,
I think I know what you're talking about.
But what I'm really trying to say is there's extra things going on in the world that nobody want to pay attention to. Because you see, they take the basic instructions before leaving Earth, which is better known as the Bible, and they exploit it, by telling us that we have to go to church, to learn the instructions, when really all we have to do is sit down and read them. But then you can't go by the basic instructions because it has been revised, and it tells you on there that it's been revised. So how can you know? And the definition of revised, from my knowledge, is to to change. So then that gets me. What have you changed in the book? Mainly they like to say they've changed up, just for our understanding. Our understanding. Well, no, that don't sound right.
Right.
And then they say if you follow your basic instructions, before leaving Earth, then you can be godly. But then if you take God and then you break it down, which is a general obedient disciple. Then that's if you oh man,
I think I know what you're getting at. You're illustrating the central problem, of allowing religion to determine how it is you think about things in life and how it is you set the rules for what you live by. First off, I don't really see how it's possible for any person to develop any kind of sound morals simply based upon a list of instructions that you have to follow. Mm-hmm. Because that is not encouraging you to understand why it is that certain behaviors are good, bad, or the other. And then, of course, when you deal with the problem of all of the multiple translations of the Bible and the various inconsistencies that exist therein, taking some 2,000-year-old book, as you put it, the instruction manual for life, isn't necessarily the sound way to do it. I mean, one needs, I think, it's much more sensible for people to simply observe what is going on in the world around them and just understand through common sense thinking, that there are good ways to be, that it makes sense to do good things and as opposed to not doing good things. Not doing good things makes no sense because it results in harm. And doing harm makes no sense. Right. It makes good sense to do things that are beneficial as opposed to harmful. Well, because nobody, even if they think they do, nobody really in the end gets anything out of being, bad to folks. You generally tend to, everything what goes around comes around, right?
Right, because it's a big circle. But I just listening to you, I just got the main thought that I really wanted to say though. I look at how really did this planet get started? I mean, what they say Adam and Eve. Nah, we can't say. We didn't got that point. I heard y'all point about that. But then we say evolution. Mm-hmm. Evolution. Okay, so we're monkeys, right? Okay.
Well, that's not quite what evolution has to say, but it's
that's mainly where it's supposed to start, though, right?
Well, no, not really. I mean, it has to do with such things as genetics, mm-hmm. How DNA, certain combinations of DNA alter and change frequency, and living things will adapt to their environment over long periods of time. And you can see that happening. I mean, we've seen, we can actually see example. It's called speciation, when you have one animal that breaks off into two different types of animal.
Okay, wait.
So, can I add something to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Really, the most fundamental aspect of evolution is that it explains how, over time, simple organisms can give rise to more complex organisms, and over time these organisms become capable of more complex behavior and more capable of surviving in their environment.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Hey, well, you see, you're swaying me away because it's not mainly evolution neither. Okay. Is what I'm trying to say. Okay. You see, I look at the world and I think about how do you start, creation. And let's take the David Koresh, the Waco. Only way he got that started, he gave him something to believe in, right? In order to start it, you have to have two. You can't have one without the other. Good, bad. You know what I'm saying? Down. You got to have two. It's always got to be two. Chaos and order. And that's how it was started. And
Are you talking about the beginning of the universe or the beginning of life?
Not the universe, but I'm talking because it was already people up there in the universe. You know, they just came down here, you know, and killed the dinosaurs because they know we couldn't live with them. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I'm sorry.
No, we weren't actually around.
You think it's funny, though,
what,
but you don't want to believe
lost me there. Hang on. Okay, I'm sorry. You completely lost me with that last one.
I did. You know what? And usually when I talk like that, I usually lose people because they don't want to take that aspect into their head.
Well, no. I mean, what you were trying to say wasn't clear to me. I'd like you to rephrase it more clearly.
Okay. Here's the bottom line.
Okay.
We were already created. We were always humans, actually aliens. We were already there.
I see.
And just like what our government is doing now, building these spaceships to check out other planets, to move around, see if the other planets are livable, that's how it happened here.
I get it. Okay.
And see, the planet Earth, in order to have the Earth be good, you have to give them God. Because see, good ain't nothing but God without an O, and evil ain't nothing but
God's like the head alien?
Hey, you know what? It ain't ain't no head alien. We are all the head aliens, if you think about it.
Okay.
Because take the Bible to back up what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. He says your body is my temple.
Right. Okay.
Okay. So if you be good to your body, then that's another way of being God. Like I said earlier. Okay. But then that takes me. Okay. Well, wait a minute. I'm supposed to uplift myself, which I'm really supposed to uplift God.
Okay.
So in reality, is the Bible telling me if I do all these things here, I am the God. You are your God.
Okay.
That guy there, that doctor is his God. That other guy there is his God.
Okay. I think I got it. Well, we appreciate your call, all right? You take care. Wow.
Glad you got it.
Boy, what a Fruit Loop. Okay. Beau is on line one. Thanks. Okay. Hello, Beau.
All right.
Hi, you're on TV. How you doing?
Okay, I'm loving it. All right.
Good.
Let's touch on some things here. I don't know, just to comment on something earlier, it's kind of a dilemma when you're teaching, because one of the objectives is to teach the difference between opinion and fact. Mm-hmm. And it's a strange thing, because when you take the statement of, is Jesus God? You know, I don't know where you can go with that. But anyway, look, I need a response from y'all again. I'm sure I've asked this before. I guess I just need to have it again and again. I'll record this and watch it over and over.
Okay, well, let us have it.
Y'all are skeptics, yet you're saying there's no such thing as God. This has really always never sat well with me, and if you could just go ahead and give me your excuse for this, saying that there's
I'll reply to that.
You go right ahead.
I'm going to start with what Laplace said to Napoleon, Sire, I have no need of that hypothesis. We are attempting to understand the world in all of its aspects. We try to use our observations and our logic, in general, our minds, to the best of our understanding, understand a very complex world. And we find it unhelpful in trying to arrive at this understanding to simply invoke a super intelligent, super powerful being who explains everything but really explains nothing. That's not the sort of understanding that we're after.
Yeah. The problem with God, of course, is that, well, first off, there has never, that I've encountered, been any consistency in the definitions of what the word God even means from believer to believer. Because you'll have Christians...
but they all use the same word, and therefore they think they're all talking about the same thing.
The same thing, precisely. And so you run into exactly that sort of problem that you mentioned, which is what exactly does invoking God explain? I mean, and how is God any better an explanation than any other sort of explanation when you think about it? Because once you introduce a concept like God into a situation where you're trying to solve a problem, then suddenly God needs to be explained. And what you've done is you've invoked an answer that raises more questions. and you're attempting to explain a mystery with a mystery, as it were.
There's a well-known cartoon that shows two scientists at a blackboard, and one of them has covered it all with equations, only somewhere in the middle it says, and then a miracle occurs. And the other one says, could you clarify this point here?
Right. Yeah. So, before taking seriously in the first place God as a concept, first we have to know exactly what it is that's being talked about, what it is we're being expected to understand, and then we need to have some way of essentially testing. And
some of us are talking about the infinite ground of being.
Sure.
And some of us are talking about the king of the aliens.
Right. Precisely. As we've seen on our program, we never get a definition consistently from caller to caller. Rarely, and even from Christian to Christian, because we get calls from Christians who are deeply fundamentalist, and then we'll get calls from Christians who are a bit more liberal-minded. And then we'll get people who are trying to give us pantheistic or deistic ideas about God. And a question that we had from someone from an email, I think, recently was, well, if you can't deny the possibility of a deistic God. And so at that point, what is your justification for being atheist? And I pointed out in response that, it's not about, atheism is just an expression of disbelief. It's not about denying the possibility of things. I'm perfectly open to whatever evidence you have to present for whatever claim that you want to make. However, not being able to deny the possibility of something doesn't constitute justification for going ahead and believing in that thing just because it sounds like a good answer.
I actually like to take a somewhat stronger position for myself.
Okay.
I enjoy being outrageous, so I will do so now. I like to make a distinction between logical truths and contingent truths. Okay. An example of a logical truth is 2 + 2 = 4. It makes no sense whatsoever to entertain the possibility that 2 + 2 = 5, because it's simply inconsistent with what we mean by 2 and 4 and 5, and the properties of these numbers that just follow from their definition. On the other hand, if I ask, does there exist intelligent life in another galaxy? Well, I don't know enough. Not only do I not have enough information to determine whether that is true or not, but it would certainly not contradict anything I understand, whichever way the answer comes down. So I am prepared to be agnostic on that point. I am prepared to accept either answer and to retain an open mind. Now, a point that I make, which is where I become an extremist, is that the idea of understanding the whole universe and treating it as knowledge and explanation by saying the whole thing was created by an intelligent being, to me, that is violates the truth of the logical sort, because it's no explanation at all. To say God created the universe, then immediately you have to say, and what created God?
And what is God?
Yeah, but
how does God create universes?
It still could be, just because y'all can't say who created that thing that you've found out about or theorized about, doesn't mean that that's not possible, right?
Well, the point that I'm making is that it doesn't answer anything. It simply sweeps the question under the rug.
Right. Yeah. Look, I think the point you're making is that Jesus Christ is for sure not God because of the absurdity of that situation.
We haven't even brought that up. That's you're saying that.
Okay, I'm saying that.
Okay.
That's because of the absurdity of the Bible. So we know that that's not possible. But there may be some omnipotent force in the universe, wom or something. Yeah. And there may be some creator being that intelligently has some bizarre puzzle he's making.
And there may be, though, that is a possibility. However, when we look back at the universe and how it actually works, we can find physical laws and we can come up with ideas of how it happened that doesn't require a God. And so if there is something that we come across that there is simply no other explanation for, then some, super powerful, omnipotent being came down and poofed it into existence, then okay, there may be a God. But we have no reason, we have no evidence to back up that there could be a God, and so because of that, we just don't bother to believe. There's no reason to believe in it.
So y'all will make that statement that there may be an omnipotent controller of the universe.
Well, there may be intelligent purple flying rabbits on the surface of Neptune.
Yeah, there's a small chance.
But that's not an atheist statement. Y'all are branching off. That's
no. What I'm trying to point out, your whole point of there may be this and there may be that isn't what constitutes good grounds to go ahead and accept a claim as valid.
Right,
okay.
But y'all are not atheists. Y'all are non-theists,
Well, we are atheist, non-theist, same thing.
Atheist is the lack of a belief in a God. I do not believe in a God. I'm not saying there absolutely cannot be one. I'm saying there most likely isn't. There's a really, really good chance that there isn't a God out there.
See,
I don't bother to believe in it.
Another thing that you have to entertain, I'm sorry, Doctor, but I was just going to mention, another thing you have to entertain also is drawing a distinction between possibility and probability. That's an important point. It is indeed possible that there could be all sorts of paranormal explanations for things, but what is the probability that those explanations are the valid ones as opposed to other perfectly natural explanations that have been observed?
Yeah, I'd like to build on something you said, and that an atheist is somebody who doesn't believe that there's a God. I would go a little bit beyond that and say an atheist lives his life and builds his understanding without invoking the concept of a God, because we don't believe that is either needed or that it adds anything.
Yeah.
That's good.
So, does your group agree on the definition of Blackshirt's definition of the atheist?
Whose definition?
I'm sorry, I don't know names of Blackshirt.
Oh, Ashley.
Oh, Ashley's.
Ashley, sorry.
Yeah.
So your definition is accepted by all atheists, at least in your group?
Well, atheism refers to a disbelief. We do not. An atheist is a person who does not believe in a God.
There is
every member of the group, right, of ACA?
There are also different definitions of God that can be invoked, and say some people in the group will say, kind of, wishy-washy, there could be a God, who knows.
Yeah.
There are other ones that says there simply does not exist.
You should understand that there is no atheist pope. There is no atheist church. There's nobody who can tell a good atheist what he believes. We are all individuals who have sufficient common beliefs that we
there's a common
call ourselves by the same name.
Yeah, but if our internet mailing list is any indication, atheists argue amongst each other quite a lot. Yeah.
So it could be anything. It's just whoever shows up and says, I'm an atheist.
Well, generally speaking, if somebody says I don't believe there's a God, that kind of makes you an atheist.
The word atheist, if you look at the etymology, the origin of the word, it simply means without God.
Yeah.
That's as good a definition as I know of.
Mm-hmm. Or without theism. Yeah.
Which is the belief in the God.
Yeah. So hope that.
Y'all are God lovers. Admit it. All right, bye.
Sorry.
Well, see ya. All right. Okay. Who's next? Richard's on line 3. Let's see. We have 12 minutes left. So, to throw in your 2 cents, go ahead and get on those phones now. Richard?
Yeah, hey Martin, how you doing?
Thanks for holding. How are you doing?
No problem. I just want to make a quick comment before my phone goes out here.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Actually, I've been watching this show for a year, and I've never really called in, but I just wanted to let you know I grew up in a very religious household, Southern Baptist, went to a Christian school, had the Bible down my throat from day one. I ended up being an atheist for many years, and I find myself in the position of agnosticism now. But I really appreciate this show. It feeds the analytical side of my mind.
Okay.
I've really enjoyed the comments of Dr. Glasser. It's been a great show, and I just wanted to thank y'all for being out there and expressing a different viewpoint than you normally get. It takes a lot of guts.
Well, we appreciate your feedback. Thanks very much.
Thank you
and that's
for
really
being
all
out
I had
there.
to say. Thank you a lot.
We really appreciate that, Richard.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
And that's nice. That's all we're trying to do, folks, with this program.
We're really sorry. We just hung up on Brandon.
Oh,
Sorry.
Did I do that?
Yeah, you hit the wrong line.
Damn
Sorry about that.
You know what? Because I think Richard got hung up on either by himself or in the control room.
Yeah, Richard hung up and you hit the wrong line.
Yeah, so the light was already off.
Sorry.
So that's what fooled me. Oh, we'll put you on first next if you call back. I've done that before.
When you said "damn it," could you expand on that?
I'd just like to remind any unbeliever out there in the audience. We do if you'd like to meet other groups of unbelievers. So we do have our bagel shop meetings at Hot Jumbo Bagels, 307 West 5th Street, and we have our happy hours on Thursday nights, 7:30 at Antonio's Tex-Mex. A lot of folks who might be unbelievers tend to feel isolated in a heavily religious culture, and this is a nice opportunity. The group mainly exists as a social group.
Yeah.
Just unbelievers getting together and socializing and having a good time. And then we do this kind of outreach as well. But is Brandon back or not, or someone? We have some calls lining up, so in our last 10 minutes. But yeah, it's just also elaborating, while we're waiting to get the names here on these callers, the difference between agnosticism and atheism, and how one can be both at the same time, or one can be agnostic and theistic. Agnosticism and Gnosticism are terms that refer to the limits or the abilities of human knowledge, as it were. What is it that I think that I know about something, I think that I cannot know about something? Whereas theism and atheism are terms that refer to belief or disbelief. And I find myself explaining quite many times to callers on this show and other people that I talk to in person that, I am both an agnostic and an atheist. I'm perfectly willing to admit that I don't know, but lacking any good evidence, it's perfectly valid not to believe until the evidence makes not believing moot. That's how I kind of see it. Okay, we have, I'm told that Tim is on line 1, and I'll take his call first.
Carefully.
Yes. Hit the air button and not the release button. Very sorry. Very, very sorry. Tim.
There you went.
Okay. He must have now there's someone on line 2. I'm told Jim is on 3.
Well, not anymore.
No.
That line went blank.
Somebody's
in the meantime.
I'm going to take line 2 and whoever...
Okay, take line 2.
Okay. Hi, you're on the air.
Hi, I'm on the air now?
Yes,
ma'am.
Hi.
Oh, hi, guys.
How are you doing?
Now, someone made a comment earlier, it may have been one of the callers, about evolution.
Mm-hmm.
There seems to be a misconception that evolution has to take a long time to take place. And one of the models I like to talk about is simply like the resistant strains of bacterium to penicillin now.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's a short period of time within, the last... less than 100 years?
Yeah, and what I was basically pointing out was that
HIV
going from bacteria to people takes a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, going from different strains of bacteria and viruses and stuff like that.
But that's the mechanism. That which survives lives long enough to breed, and the new strains are resistant. I mean, and that doesn't matter whether it's bacterium or, everybody starts growing green hair or, what the one thing I point out to a lot of people is that within the last, I think, 5 years, that there's a certain number of white lions have been born in Africa, and they're not albino, they're white.
Okay.
Now, in the present situation in Africa right now, it's a savanna and a plain, and there's not a lot of snow. But if there was a glacial event, these animals would survive, and the animals that are there now more than likely would not.
Yeah.
So you would have that change through natural selection, through evolution, and it would take place more than likely, it wouldn't take millions of years.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, that's true. I mean, it's not, I think, as Ashley pointed out in the earlier call, we were trying to explain to the caller how to get from the first cell to us took that, quite a long period of time. But yeah, we, and what you pointed out was very good. And of course, HIV is the perfect example of evolution in action. With every time there's a new drug developed, and the patients take the drug, and it wipes out something like 95% of the virus in the person's body. And that 5% of the virus that's left is the one that had the mutation in the gene that made it resistant And those are the surviving viruses that split off and reproduce and make the next generation that's completely resistant to the drug you took 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
The whole thing with evolution, too, is I've found that a number of Christians seem to have a very difficult concept with the very concept of millions of years. I mean, when you... I was talking to someone, and I made an offhanded comment, oh, yeah, there's some Christians who believe, the world is only 6,000 years old, and one of them raised their hand. And it was like, you're kidding, right? And, no, it's only 6,000 years old. All of you are wrong. I was going, oh, okay.
I want to comment on that. There is a physicist at my lab who studies tectonic motions. He has developed computer programs that allow him to study the way continental drift has occurred. Well, this fellow is also a Christian fundamentalist, and he has found that he can fiddle with the parameters of his program and get it to all take place in 6,000 years.
Wow. Wow.
And so how is this guy employed again?
He is a well-respected physicist in his area. I don't know the details of his work well enough to tell you more than that.
That seems weird that he's just not running into massive amounts of cognitive dissonance. It's not understanding because...
Well, guys, that's the only comment I wanted to make at this time. Just to let you know, I appreciate you being here, and you'll have a nice day.
Well, thanks a lot again for your call, Tamara.
Bye-bye.
Okay, now,
Yeah, it was an interesting point that was brought up there about bacteria and stuff, and their more quick evolution over time. Say that's some problems that people have with antibacterial soaps and all that kind of stuff. Are we eventually going to have to napalm our kitchen floors or something like that to keep them clean? They become resistant to everything.
Well, I'm not like that much of a hypochondriac about
50 years from now,
clean my kitchen out. Oh boy. Yeah. Well, young Earth creationists are a very small breed, but I mean that just goes to show the power of of religious indoctrination and having this 2,000-year-old tome that tells you that everything that's in this book is completely right, and you never have to ask any more questions about anything else ever again. And I think that certainly doesn't do anything to benefit the whole process of human knowledge, and it's a big hindrance. We're going to take Mike on... No, we're not.
Sorry, Brandon's back.
Oh, Brandon, and
cool.
what line's he on? He's on 1, so we're going to go ahead and take care of him. Brandon?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm so sorry we just hung up on you. That was really
not a problem.
Clumsy of me. How you doing? What's up?
Pretty good. Basically, I was just wondering about the whole evolution thing. I guess, what is it proving that the world could be like 4.5 billion years old? Is that correct?
Yes.
Well, the world, I think, is a tad bit older than that, but life on Earth... Well, no, life on Earth, I've heard...
I think the oldest,
the
oldest rocks are 4.5 billion years.
Okay, I think I've heard life
like
on
the
Earth
Earth,
about 3.
3.8.
The Earth and Moon relation, I guess the Earth-Moon system. It's like 4.5 billion years, but then they say it moves like, 4 centimeters away every year? The moon does, moves away from the Earth?
Okay, I'll take those.
I don't know the number, but yes, it's moving slowly away.
It's also a cyclical thing, though.
And they say with that equation that at the longest that the upper limit that the moon could exist is 1.4 billion years, before it moves completely away.
I don't
and I was just wondering,
know of
has there
any
been
such
anything that's proven that lately or changed that theory? I mean,
okay.
I don't
or that's
think
still like a big question.
I don't think the which it's moving away is as a constant over all that time.
Exactly.
And I don't know of any contradiction in all of this.
Yeah. There is an assumption that the rate has been unchanging all along, and that's, I think, not at all been determined to be true.
As a matter of fact, you know that the moon always keeps the same face towards. That's what they're referring to. Sometimes referring to the dark side of the moon, the side of the moon that faces away from the Earth. Well, early in the evolution of the Earth-Moon system, the moon rotated relative to the Earth, but as time went on, the tidal forces between the Earth and the moon slowed that down until it now always keeps the same face toward the Earth. So that's just an example of how how the rates change over time.
Yeah, and conditions, as you talked about at the beginning, can change. And initial conditions can completely read out. But anyway, we got to run. We're out of time. So thanks a lot for your call, Brandon, and we'll talk to you later, all right? Bye. Okay. Okay, and Mike, we know you're on hold, and we're sorry we didn't get to take your call this week. But call us back next week, because we are here every Sunday at 4:30, Channel 10. Reruns of this show on Tuesday afternoons at 4:30 on Channel 10. Thank you again so much for Dr. Glasser for coming. It's always very fascinating when you're on the show, and we'd love to have you back again to talk about more. Very informative and entertaining. We'll be back. Don't forget to check our website, atheist-community.org, for more information about us. And see you next week. Christians, we don't hate you. We just think you're wrong. Take care. See you next time. Bye-bye.